And then lastly, we have Ms. Gizem Akar, a data scientist and advanced analytics at Raiffeisen Bank International, AG. And she will deliver talk with the topic of anti-money laundering. Please welcome to the stage, Ms. Gizem.
Okay, thank you colleagues for joining me, the last session of today. I am Gizem and I'm working as a data scientist at Raiffeisen Bank at the head office in Vienna. And today I would like to talk about anti-money laundering machine learning model that we constructed for the head office. First, I would like to talk about the AML, like anti-money laundering problem statement and what kind of business problems that we faced, and then afterwards what kind of solutions that we introduced, and then the basic idea of those solutions, and then the results, success factors, and next steps. So first, what is money laundering? I'm sure you heard about money laundering from the Netflix TV series, right? Some of them, exactly, some Panama Papers and then stuff like that. And then we know the general concept, and I know it's a bit, short, I can just read it, the goal of, and what is actually the main definition of money laundering. The goal of many criminal acts is to generate a profit for the individual or group that carries out the act and stuff like that. So it is just some kind of a definition and some kind of, the activity which has been earned in an illegal way and which is hidden by the corporates. And why do they do that? Actually, many reasons for money laundering, such as the black money, which has been earned illegally, or tax evasion, and some other factors. And I would like to give you some statistics about the money laundering. According to United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, estimates that between 2 and 5%, 2 to 5% of global GDP is laundered each year, which is 715 billion and 1.87 trillion each year. Okay, this activity actually goes on, but what percentage of it actually that we can measure or just detecting it? In 2009, the estimated global success rate of money laundering control was mere 0.2%. And of course, it damages long-term economic development, and also by distorting the capital flows and economy's international trade. And by law, as Raiffeisen Bank, we are just obliged to just detect those money laundering activities. So how it is working? So we have each and every day, we have so many transactions coming and going, right? You're just sending money, receiving money as an individual, and corporates are doing the same. And those kind of flow of transactions are just coming and going to our system, and we are observing it. And we have a bunch of scenarios. And those scenarios actually triggered when there is, for example, somebody sends money to, for example, Panama, which is the most obvious one. And then we receive an alert. And this alert has been generated, and then it goes to the compliance officer. And then this compliance officer says that, okay, this is a money laundering activity, or this is not a money laundering activity, and then it just adds up. And then if it is a money laundering activity, we just report it to the authorities, which is a suspicious activity report. But of course, we have a bunch of business problems here, because we receive a lot of alerts. Those alerts, actually the first one is a high number of false positives. The transactions, they trigger the alerts, but at the end of the day, the compliance officer says, no, this was not actually money laundering activity. And we receive so many of them. And second, cases which are not detected by any scenarios. Actually, according to the statistics, we are only capable of detecting 1% of it. And there are so many cases and so many transactions that we are not capable of estimating. And the third, Of course, those kind of investigations are subject to human bias. The same case can be evaluated differently by different AML compliance officers. And we need some kind of a common ground. And how can we actually solve this? The first is the target group is the alerted customers. We receive such transactions, and then afterwards, some of them, trigger our scenarios, and then it goes to the compliance officers. And then this first classification problem is that it just, we have features, and then afterwards, it just says that, yeah, it was reported to the authorities or not. So we had this, and then afterwards, the algorithm just ranks the score for each and every alert. And then we have a threshold. About one threshold, we just send it to the AML compliance officers so that they get rid of false positives. Of course, not everything, because it has some error in it. But then it just helps them to reduce the amount of false positives by ranking them with the algorithm. The second one is today what I'm going to present and focus on the most, which is the unsupervised learning. And the target group is the ones which are not detected by our scenarios. So which is called the non-alerted customers here. So I have a pointer here. Yeah, non-alerted customers. And imagine, right now, I would like to start thinking about, how can I actually capture the non-alerted customers who are doing money laundering activities? So many transactions keep on going and coming, and then you only can see and observe your only data and not the other banks or anything because of GDPR. And what you only see is your own data, and then you have to just come up with something which can actually capture the non-alerted ones. And here, we can also think about it as your individual. And what we are doing is, like, for example, we have a routine, right? You have a home and you have work. Usually just you commute every day to work and then come back and hang out with friends. And you have kind of a behavior which is normal for you. Of course, time to time you deviate from your own behavior, but you can say that actually your behavior is kind of a normal. So this is what we did for our corporate customers. And we defined, according to our transactional data, what is normal for them. And then how do you do this? With their own transactional behavior. You'll go back in time and then say that my customer has been behaving this way. And then if there's actually deviation from what is normal for them, then we can say that, yeah, this started to behave differently. Maybe there's something suspicious here that my actual scenarios couldn't trigger. And this is what we are doing. So we are using this outliers, or just the outlier detection algorithm, as a peer group comparison, defining what is normal and then deviating from what is normal from them. And of course, data is very important, and have to start with the data construction. And instead of focusing on the transactions, we focused on the customers first. And by defining what is normal for the customer, we say, okay, this is my customer, and those are the static features about my customer, and then afterwards, those are my dynamic features about my customer. And this customer has been behaving like this. Okay, there are some fluctuations in different months, I don't know, Christmas market boost, and then like slow down afterwards and stuff like this. And then after defining what is normal for them, you're capable of defining what is an outlier. So we have the data, and then we have the customer account transaction and past alert information, and we created a data set, again saying that this is my customer, and then features next to it. And then afterwards, the feature selection. And as I said, the goal of the project is to define what is abnormal for a customer. And we wanted to just to rank them according to their risk. And if it is actually behaving in a way that it's used to behave, then it is green. And if there is something like a very few deviation from what is normal, then it is yellow. And if customer suddenly behaved just super weird, then it is actually red. And we want to classify those non-alerted customers in 3 categories like that. And when you say something is normal and abnormal, what did we do is like first we took the customer, and then afterwards their transactional history, what it was doing in the last month, quarter, year, and stuff like that. And then afterwards, of course, the peer group comparison. And there is one hypothesis here that we say, actually, the AML context is correlated with transactional data that strongly deviate from what is typical for a certain set of customers. So we said the peer group that we constructed by ourselves should be actually, and the people or the customers within this peer group should behave the same. Not only the transactional history of the customer, but also the peer group behavior in that. And yeah, as I said, the first we have this customer's current transaction profile, and then actually we are creating the peer groups, and then also the customer's its own past, and also the detecting the sudden changes. We can also just go one more time here, like the current transaction profile, current transaction profile, and it's coming from the peer group transaction profiles, historic transaction profile of this customer, and then whether it triggered any weird alert before. And then afterwards, we will detect outliers. And what did we use? We use PCA, Principal Component Analysis. So we constructed, and then afterwards we say, okay, this is normal for one customer, and then this is the peer group normal from according to this customer, and then we just say, and we want to, of course, just rank each and every customer, and then we want to introduce a score for each and every customer. And this score will indicate how risky it is, how risky is my customer. And to be able to do it, we use the PCA, and we have two components. The first one is the orthogonal distance, which is like when you shrink the dimension from, for example, 300 to 20 and shrink it back to 300. And the orthogonal loss is the difference between the first dimension and then the shrink and backwards. And also we have the other one, the score loss, and we have the combined loss afterwards. And then what we do is like after calculating this combined loss, we rank the customers. And of course, like most of them should be here, right? And then by logic, the higher the score, the higher the risk for the customer in hand. And what we have is the outlier score. And we have this outlier score, and we want, of course, most of the customers within the green zone, which means that it is actually behaving in a way that we are expecting. And some of the deviation from the normal behavior is the yellow zone. And the ones who are really deviating from what is normal is the red zone. But of course, among the total number of customers, only the 1% is the red zone, because we also don't want to just bombard all the AML compliance people with the additional work. And we only want to send them the ones that we are really, really aware of and then we are sure of. And then afterwards, we just detect them within the red zone. But of course, this is an unsupervised learning, and I don't have a baseline to compare it with. So what I do is I go back to the AML compliance colleagues in the bank, and then afterwards we just go through the results, and then say, if they say yes, you're true, then this is actually behaving in a good way. But if they say no, this was wrong, then you have to go back to your features, update them one more time, and rerun the model again until you reach actually the 50% target. At least the red zone, within the red zone, 50% of the customers should be suspicious. This was our target in the beginning. And accordingly, afterwards, what we did is like still under construction, by the way. This is just only a POC. It's not in production yet. And then while funding, because this algorithm actually ranks which features are the most important ones. And then you go back to your supervised learning and your alerts. Remember, we have some alerts that they trigger. And then we update our alerts because we miss them. Our customers are actually behaving in a different way. So you go back and feedback your supervised learning with the findings of the unsupervised learning. I hope this was not super fast, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. So do we have any questions?
Can be anything, don't worry. No. Yeah, sure.
Can you wait for a second?
I can also show my microphone.
Thank you for presentation. It was really interesting. So I'm wondering if you are sharing your results with other banks. So
Yeah, this is another topic. There is no information exchange in that sense, unfortunately, because of the privacy issues. I also wanted to show you more about the features and some results, but of course I'm not allowed to. Because of this kind of lack of information exchange, we're also not super effective in detecting money laundering activities. So the answer is simply no, unfortunately.
okay, thank you. Maybe also another question.
Sure.
What kind of feedbacks do you receive from compliance?
Yeah, so first they are, of course,
officer?
they're not happy because it's kind of additional work for them. Supervised learning that they love because it's actually decreased the amount of work, because it just gets rid of the false positives because by ranking them. But the unsupervised is the ones only for the non-alerted customers. And even though it is just 1%, additional 15 customers or alerts for the AML compliance people, they're not happy about what they are doing, of course, but as they actually get used to it and as they trust it, because it's also about the trust in machine learning algorithms. If they don't know it, they don't like it. And also it is kind of hard to explain it to the authorities, because they may say, okay, how did you detect it? Why do you think that this is suspicious and stuff like that? So explainability of the model is very important.
Do you have any explainer models behind these machine learning models?
I mean, we are using the shop values, and then those shop values say that, yeah, this was the reason, and then you go back to transactional values, and then say, yeah, this was because of this reason, exactly this reason, we found that this is suspicious, and which is not included in our scenarios. That's why you couldn't detect it. So this is how it goes.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other question? Well, I guess not. Thank you, Gizem.
You're welcome.